What is your name and where are you from?
Avi Silverstein, and I grew up outside of the Philadelphia area, which is where I live now.
Right, I can
Pretty
see
much
that
been
your lamp and your cap there. You're a
a
faithful
big
fan.
Flyers fan. Yeah, yeah, and just basically lived in the Northeast most of my life.
Yeah, I tell you what, you Philly fans are dedicated. I have
Yeah,
several.
dedicated, but we're also tortured because
Yes, I know.
a lot of disappointment.
Well, that is it was more of a credit because a lot of people are fair weather fans. That's great.
Yeah,
I've noticed that though from the Philly people. Uh,
yeah.
how did you originally hear about my website?
It's a really good question, Sean. I'm going to have to say by Googling. I usually would do this if I want to learn a new song. I'll do like the name of the song, like Jamaica Say You Will piano tutorial. I'll Google that,
Okay,
and that wasn't the song that I found you on because that was a new one. But whatever song I first learned from you, um, I can't say this like 1,000%, but it had to been via a Google search where I was
okay,
looking for like a piano tutorial version of whatever song that was,
okay. So
and
probably YouTube. Yeah.
yeah, but it was usually it would lead. It was a Google search that led to the YouTube page,
Okay.
and um, it'd
Excellent.
be curious to know what was that first song I learned from you. But
Yeah, I always
again,
wonder that.
but you have a very extensive catalog, and
Yeah.
um, there's other resources I've used online, but they don't have a fraction of the songs that you do.
Thank you. And it's extensive because I've been doing it for almost 18 years now. And I think I've stayed in because, when people started putting all the free stuff on YouTube, a lot of the lesson websites kind of collapsed. Somehow I was able to keep going. And I think part of it is that extensive library because there are versions of songs that you can't get anywhere else. And again, that's not me. That's thanks to you guys. You've helped me to keep going in all of this and actually have some really good years and getting better every year.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, that's great. What do you like most about learning from my method?
Just the fact that everything is really broken down. You dedicate a lot of time into a given piece of music, and you don't rush through it. You really go through it part by part. But I like the fact that you chunk it, you break it up into different
Okay.
chunks. It's not the entire song dumped on you at once. So you learn the intro here, and then you learn the first verse here, and then the chorus here. And so, by breaking it up, it's more manageable, like both physically
Excellent.
and also mentally. And
Yeah. Thank you
like
for
I said,
noticing that. I Go ahead.
also the fact that I feel like I feel confident, like, hey, I know I can learn this song without being somebody who reads music. Like that in itself is very comforting, and
Excellent. Well, I
it's a
love
very
that. I love that you feel the fact that I break it up because I know why people quit. One is they pick too hard songs. They don't go low enough
yep,
on their level,
yep.
and that they don't break it up. They try to learn the whole thing at once, and they get frustrated and quits. That's kind of where that originated. But I'm glad you're saying that. Sometimes I do go too fast. I know that. That's there's a pause
That's
button
where
and
the
there's a
beauty of
slow
the
down button too.
yes, you can. I like that. Sometimes on an intricate part, I'll do the slower speed to see the fingering. But that's the beauty of video is that you can
Yeah.
always just like stop and go back and stop and go back. And that, at least the way my brain works, a lot of repetition helps.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. Good repetitions for sure. So on a what makes my less I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
skipping one. So I've always made it an effort, we kind of touched on this before, to give you exactly as best I can what's on the album, what's on the live version, because I don't want to give you a version. I don't want to give you, a dumbed down thing that's sort of like it where you can, but I like to try to give you the actual thing because that's what I want to play. So I figure everyone else wants to do that too. Do you notice that and do you care that that's the way I've
yeah,
always done it?
without question. I mean, I think that's one of the things that really, from my experience, distinguishes you from some other piano tutorials is that you really do go above and beyond to teach the song and play the song as it's heard, whether it's a studio album or a live album. And let's face it, we know these songs from listening to them on whether it's a radio, album, CD. We know these songs from listening to them
Yeah.
in those original versions. And um, it's frustrating sometimes. I've come across tutorials where they'll teach you a song, but it really has nothing to do with how the original song sounds. And with
Yeah,
your method, the songs, it's perfect. It's a perfect representation of how they really like, how the artist created and originally played that song. I mean, it's
thank you.
it's, and then now people can choose to play it, they can give it their own flavor and whatnot. But
Sure,
I
right.
love the fact that when you teach a song, like you teach it very, very accurately.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've always wanted to give that, and I also wanted to show you, like, if Elton John is ripping out a piano solo or he's vamping on a chord in a live concert, he's not reading music. He's also not spitting out something that he read on music that he's memorized. He's in the
Right.
moment, and so I always want to show you guys how he's thinking when he's doing that, so you can play it that way instead of giving you. Some sort of written out every little single note in a vamp. Sometimes I'll show you, well, this is how he's doing it. This is how he's
Yeah.
thinking. And I want to show you how to do what he's doing so that you can do that thing in the moment like he's doing. So yeah, that's something I've enjoyed doing as well. What makes my method different from, did I already ask that? Yeah, I already asked that. I'm sorry. On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with my lessons?
I would say like an 8.5.
All right.
Um, just again, it's just, they're very thorough, and they're organized in such a way that, they're not overwhelming to learn them. You can do them in parts. And I think since I started working with you on your site, I've only seen it gotten better in terms of the video quality, the ability to slow down or go backwards, the way you have the scale now in the background.
Mhm.
So if anything, it's just continuing to get, more user friendly.
Well, I want to thank you, Avi, for not giving me a 10. Everyone else is 10, 10, 10 plus 10. But I
Okay.
like the 8.5 because we all can get better at what we're doing. And
Yeah.
if we're never going to reach, it's a journey, even in my teaching. And I like that little space so that I can still get better. I never want to feel like I've reached there because I haven't. I'm still trying to get better. And so I'd like to ask, what can I do to make everything better? What would you suggest? What are your critiques for me to even make it better?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. So one thing that I notice sometimes helps me that I've seen other tutorials do
Okay.
is after they chunk the song and teach it, they'll play it in its entirety from start to finish.
I knew you were going to say
Yeah.
that.
Um,
Yes. I know.
sometimes these people sing with it, sometimes they just play the piano, but
Yes.
um, then I just find that the way my brain processes it, it's like, this is how it all flows.
Yes. That is a wonderful thing. I want to tell you why I haven't done that a lot. I have done it a little bit. That's because, if you cross over into the area of covers and I'm not teaching anymore, as long as I'm on the side of the line that's teaching, I'm safe with copyright and stuff. But as soon as I
Right.
become a cover, if I'm performing it, if anyone looks at that and says he's performing it, then all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm stepping on some record company toes. So that's the
That's it.
biggest reason why I haven't done that. However, YouTube now, the record companies love you on YouTube if you put up stuff, especially covers, because they will take 90% of the revenue. But I'm thinking about playing it through the songs through on YouTube and just do an embed on the site so that everybody gets what they're supposed to get. They get their
Right.
royalties. Then I get to do the playthrough. But that's a wonderful suggestion, and I do desire to do that and have always wanted to. But that's the main reason why I haven't. But that's a great suggestion.
The only
Well,
other
I'm
thing
going
I
to
can
run
think
out
of,
of
but
time. Huh?
this is more for me. Like sometimes I do, I like I'll just be questioning like, well, what chord are we playing here? Like,
Yeah.
but that's just more how because I kind of learned piano from chords and
Right.
then
That's
started
great.
to fill in the medley in between. And so there are certain times where because you're playing such a unique voicing
Yeah.
that I'll have to think for a second, wait, what chord is this? But
Yeah.
I can always usually figure it out by seeing what I'm doing with the left hand. And it's
Yeah. So I've actually had people say, well, why don't you write the chords on there as well? And I guess sometimes I will do that, but I'm really trying not to let the board get too cluttered because part of the magic of it is the simplicity. But I always try to mention the chord if I think of it. But that is true. I could do better on some of the chords. Now sometimes they're complex, and so uh, there's a lot of things going on that there's options of what you would call this chord, and it would actually end up probably confusing somebody if you got
That's true. That's
too
true.
too
And I know
involved in
that,
it.
yeah, no, that's a good point because very often there's a variety of different things you call a given chord.
All right.
So,
Well, I'm gonna have to wrap up here because there's I've got 1 minute and Zoom's gonna cut me off because I only have the free version.
okay.
Anything I can do for you? Any question you have for me, real quick?
No, Shawn, I really want to just reiterate how helpful it's been to have a resource like yours. I'm going to continue to use it, and at the end of the day, it makes me a better piano player and a more complete player in terms of the songs I can perform.
Thank you. And I'm going to send you an email right after this. If got a Google link, if you wouldn't mind just clicking
Sure.
that and taking 2 minutes to type out something, what we've been
Yeah.
saying here.
Lost you.
Okay. Unmute me,
Now I
Abby.
hear you. Now I hear you.
Okay, great.
You can see me okay?
Yes, it looks
Okay.
great. I mean, you're doing it
Okay.
perfect. Yeah. A lot of people will start with the portrait and they're holding it and it's it's so hard.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Sorry
perfect
about
the
that.
way you have it. Landscape and you're not having to hold it. Yeah, so how long have you been with me, Avi?
So I want to say at least 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Uh, I think that's about accurate. I'd have to go back and look for sure, but um, I would say about 3 years.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, that's I've had all things. I've had some guy the other day had been with me for maybe 5 or 6 months, and another one 17 years, another one 15 years. So it's
Wow.
been varied. Yeah. So I was really amazed that a lot of these members I'm contacting have been with me for so long. I had no idea. So I started in
Yeah.
2007, which is going to be 18 years pretty soon since I've started on YouTube, and it's just incredible how long.
That's really amazing. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
amazing.
So. And I'm asking everybody, why are you still with me? I'm glad you are, but what am I doing right? So I can keep members. But anyway, so I wanted to get you kind of your upbringing, where you started. Did you take
Yeah.
traditional piano lessons? Did you,
Oh,
were you playing the stuff you wanted to play, or were you listening to other music that you wish you could have played in your piano lessons? Did you learn to read music? What were you listening to? What
yeah.
was your
No,
upbringing?
really good question. So, we had baby grands in our house growing up. Um, for the most part, I guess it was decorative. I don't think too many people in my house played it.
Okay.
Um, at a young age, maybe like 10, my mom tried to sign me up for piano lessons. I gave it a little bit of a shot, but just didn't stick with it. Between the teacher and the material, I wasn't really locked in. So I didn't go through, but we've always had a very musical household. My brother's a guitar player,
Okay.
youngest of 4 kids. So we would have records just scattered throughout the house. I mean,
Yeah.
everything Beatles, Jackson Brown, Joni Mitchell, Stones.
Yeah.
So obviously, being the youngest of the kids, like their music influence had a big impression on me.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, I always just was drawn to the piano. I loved it, even though I never stuck with formal lessons. And over the years, when I was little, yeah, I just started sitting down at our family piano and just like learning basic chords,
Uh,
and I remember learning like Let It Be at a very young age, just very simplistic version. And I was able to get like fairly decent without really like I don't study music, I don't read music.
hmm
I did go a really long stretch without really playing. I guess post college and living in
Okay.
different apartments, I just didn't have access to a piano. And about 4.5 years ago, when I moved into this house, I ended up picking up a baby grand piano. It was always kind of a dream of mine to kind of
Okay.
have my own. And shortly after that was probably when I came across your website and your teaching methods. And what I've been doing the last 4 years is basically like I still don't read music. I don't really have the patience to try to learn,
Uh-huh.
but I just will use a lot of different online tutorials. If I have sheet music in front of me and I just see the chords, I know how to play
Uh-huh.
basic chords,
Okay.
even though I can't read the actual specific notes in
Yeah.
between. But if I know a song, which most songs I sit down and play, I know, I'm just able to kind of improvise the melody in between the chords just based on
Uh-huh.
ear.
Sure.
And what
So
I
you got a
really,
pretty good ear.
yeah, thank you. But I really, one of the things that really drew me to you was twofold. One, um, you were set up in such a way where you didn't have to learn, you didn't have to know how to read music to
Mhm.
be able to play these songs. And I found that really refreshing and very unique. I really haven't come across it before.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I really admired about your approach and your site is that not only do you have an extensive catalog, like, just an incredible catalog of music, and a lot of which are songs I love, but I really, really admire the fact that you really try to play the songs and teach the songs as they're heard on the records.
Yes, I do.
Whether even live versions, you do it with live versions too.
Yeah,
And
especially.
yeah, I love that. I mean, with the Jackson Brown songs you taught me, like,
Uh-huh.
they were perfect. They were perfect. And it's just something that I really appreciate. I've come across tutorials online where, yeah, someone's teaching how to play a song, but it really sounds nothing like the original artist.
Yeah. Thank you for
And
bringing that up. I have a couple of questions here. One,
yeah,
on the music reading thing, do you feel like it was more that your brain just didn't work that way? Because I've met my brain doesn't work that way. And people are amazed when I say, "Yeah, I was terrible at sight reading. I've gotten better since I've kind of figured out some things what I needed to do, but I'm still not, awesome at it." And I think my brain just doesn't work that way. Do you feel that that's where you were, or was it that you weren't given the tools maybe to read music well, or what was the disconnect there for you with the reading?
yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it was, I never really embraced it at an early age. And
Mhm.
then once I really started to get acclimated with the piano, feel my way around the keyboard, chords and inversions, and even some scales, I just, even though I knew it would be beneficial and helpful to be able to read music, I honestly, I just didn't have the patience to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
And the way I learn, whether it's, a college class, a high school class, like I learned through a lot of repetition and a
Yeah.
lot of, just kind of rehearsing. And I just, I feel like I play the piano at a level where I really enjoy it, and I find it very fulfilling and satisfying.
Mhm.
And while sometimes it can be frustrating not being able to like read the notes that are on some sheet music when I'm trying
Yeah.
to learn a song on my own, say not with someone like yourself, while that can be frustrating,
Yeah.
I have zero desire to start from scratch to learn. And I think similar to what you said, I think, it's very complicated to me. It's very,
Yeah.
you look at a musical score and it's like, especially if you look at something like a classical music, I mean, it looks like
Yeah.
another language. It is
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
language.
I'd like to little comment here on that. I think what it is with people like you and I is that, and I found this just from I mean, doing this my whole life. And so
Yeah,
you learn a few things from doing that, teaching 50 students a week for, 3 or 4 decades.
yeah.
But I think what it is that you have a strength in another area that helps you to learn your ear and your understanding of music. So you're going to gravitate automatically to the thing that you're best at. You're going to do it that way if something works for you. And so that the ear that you had and the way you thought, that's how you learned the music in the beginning. So the sight reading suffered because some people that don't have any, as much musical talent, that's the only way they can do it is by learning to read. And so I see these people these kids that just pick up reading automatically. Sometimes it's just, they have a knack for it. And sometimes I think if their ear's not so good, that's the only way they can do it. And so people who have maybe a better ear, they're going to use that strength, and that reading is going to suffer because you're memorizing and just by demonstration, your teacher thinks, oh, they're reading the music, and like we're not, we're just memorizing because we're so good at doing it this way, and so you're working on this other thing that has nothing to do with sight reading music, and so that's why you never get good at it. That's my little theory on that, how that happens sometimes.
Yeah, I think I think you strike a good point there. And I also just, I guess it comes down to like when I sit and play songs, um, forgetting the fact that I don't read music, like that's what I really enjoy.
Hmm.
Like I really
Yeah.
enjoy. There was a while I started doing these piano tutorials online to just learn to be more a complete player, whether they were learning scales or learning just different techniques to help with your finger dexterity. And
Uh-huh.
they sure they were helpful, but I would have little patience for it over
Yeah.
time, and I would just go back to what I really enjoyed doing, which was just playing
Yes.
songs that I love.
Well, I mean,
And
you keep mentioning things. You keep saying, I love, I enjoy. You're doing something right if that's what's happening for you. And I have to say, it's great to be able to read music, but if I had to choose between doing what you do and what reading music, I would choose what you're doing because the understanding and the enjoyment, it isn't like I have to learn this skill so that one day I can try to play the songs I love, and then you finally buy the sheet music and it's nothing like the original, you know. So that's frustrating as well.
yeah,
But I think you're doing it right. I'm not putting down reading music. Some people think I'm saying no, it's not. No, it's a great skill to have if you want to
sure,
want to do that. But it's
sure.
not the only way to do it, right? It's just an invention of mankind to read music this way. But there are other ways to do things, and they're not lesser just because they're different. So
One
and there's other
another
ways
thing that
besides my way. And so I think any way that you can do it that works for you, where you're loving it, enjoying it, like you're talking about, then I think that works.
you've also taught me some interesting skills, like by following some of your songs that I've learned from you. You've taught me different voicings with the
Yeah.
keyboard that I didn't even know, like that
Right.
if you're playing like a C chord, C E G, like you might have a voicing where you're playing one of those three notes on the with the left hand and the other two on the right. And yeah, while you're still playing those same three notes, like it has such a different sound and feel. And once I discovered chord inversions, it just
Yeah.
opened up this whole world of, like how good, how rich in depth the song can sound.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad you mentioned the voicings. That's where the chord sheets fall short. Because you say, okay, C chord, it says C. But there's a zillion ways to play a C chord. And they are so different. They almost sound like they're different chords sometimes. They have a totally
yeah,
different feel. I mean, they're all C chords, but they're so different. So that's a part missing in the chord sheets, I think. But I'm glad you recognize that because I really try to give you guys exactly. I'm not perfect, but that's my number one goal is to give you as close as I can exactly what's on the album. When
yeah.
Jackson's
No, you
playing,
did it. There's a
I
Joni
want.
Mitchell song that I learned from
Oh,
you.
yeah,
It was live. I'm just trying. I'm spacing on the name of it, but like the way you taught it was just perfect. It was just note for note. It was just so perfect.
yeah,
And honestly, like I can't think of another resource online where I would have learned how to play it that way, because most people are, for the most part, like teaching the studio versions.
yeah.
But even so, like you seem to really go out of your way to really um, replicate the actual way that the artist plays the song.
Yeah.
And
And I have to give hats
that's
off to you guys because you guys have chosen the high request list. The library would not be near as good as it is if I didn't have that system. And I did it in the beginning because I needed, the money to pay bills and everything, but
sure,
it
sure.
allows the content to be, because you guys are so good at picking music. You know what's good. I don't really. And I really don't. Y'all have a taste for a live version that's good because, like you said, a lot of the live stuff is way better than the studio version. And you guys have chosen that, and that's how I've gotten to be able to do that. And so that's why there's so many live versions on the site because they're better many times than studio
Yeah,
versions. You get
and
more.
just different too, refreshing because they're different. Um, yeah, no, but it's another song I've learned from you was I mean, there's so many, but like "Racing in the Streets," Bruce
Oh
Springsteen.
yeah, yeah,
And that's I was playing it my own way, and it sounded okay. But then when I started playing it the way you taught it, like it sounded so much more complete and just built like just fulfilling. It was
Avi, I've got a treat for you. I've got a hard request from a guy in London who actually attended a live Bruce Springsteen concert in London, and it's Racing in the Street, and it's like 10 minutes long. The piano player goes nuts on it in this
yeah,
version, and that's what I'm working on right now. So if you like that
that's
song,
great.
I got an epic one coming up. It's going to be a blast.
Oh, that's wonderful. Um, and yeah, it's just all in all, like it's just been really refreshing to find a site like yours that kind of like speaks to somebody like myself who does not read music. I mean, if I you know, if I need to find out what note is this on a scale, I
You can do
can,
it.
takes me a while. I can't do it fluently and quickly. So it's just really nice to be able to like learn these songs, and you know, you teach them in different stages. You go into such detail and with your methods, and um, I find it, you know, really useful, and I can't even I'm just trying to think of how many songs I've actually learned from your catalog. And it's a
That's great.
bunch. I mean,
That's great.
it's a
So what
bunch.
I want to talk a minute about the actual I guess like it's a tablature sort of thing, and it's not as far removed from sheet music as people think because I actually
No, and I
my
noticed lately
yeah,
you've made it a little closer to
got
traditional
on the
music.
staff. Well,
Yep.
I didn't want to frighten people away, so I found a way to put it lightly in the background. So the staff is there, so it's not going to bother you guys who are used to my regular thing. But if you have a background in reading sheet music, it's probably going to aid you a little bit. But and it also helps you see what the older stuff I did. Oh, okay, that's what it means. But so my way of doing it is not that far removed from regular sheet music, but it's just kind of a system I developed and I learned what worked and what didn't with all my private students that I had. But
Yeah.
as far as the tablature system goes, how does that was there a learning curve there that it immediately makes sense to you? How does that work for you in a way that sheet music doesn't?
Sure. So based on a lot of things that the way I learn, it came from just doing it over and over and repetition. And um, it was just a matter of really following your methodology, and to the point where, you know, it just, the next time I was learning a song, it was much more familiar, like, oh, this is what he means. I mean, even in terms of some of the notations that you put on the page, as far as you know, how long you're holding a note, or
Sure.
how it transitions into the next note. You know, you really cover all the steps. In the beginning, I used to sometimes get a little confused, like, wait, what chord am I playing here?
Uh-huh.
But then I would always kind of usually revert to the bass hand, and you know, whatever, generally speaking,
Sure.
whatever I was playing in the bass was probably the what the chord is.
Yeah.
But again, it's taught me, just because you might be playing an E chord, you know, in a different notation, or different configuration than a traditional E chord. Like, it's really taught me, you know, different voicings, and so it was a little in the beginning. I think it just took me time to kind of get acclimated with your system, but the way my brain works, by doing it over and over, it got more and more familiar. And once, like on the Jackson Brown songs, where I saw like the tabulation, like, also I think the quality of your videos have gotten better. The functionality to go back like a few seconds,
Yeah.
that's been really helpful, because sometimes I just want to repeat a certain section, like, you know, a bunch of times in a row. And
Well, I love, you mentioned Jackson Brown. I have to admit that because you guys are teaching me with all your requests, because I went classical all the way to my late 20s. Didn't start this
yeah,
stuff till 30 or after my 30s. But Jackson Brown is one of those that I kind of listen to on the surface, like, oh, he's all right, not one of my.
right.
But as I'm doing more and more of these requests, like the past 18 months, I've gotten so many Jackson Brown requests.
I
I
bet.
don't know how or why, but I'm listening to it. And I'm like, this makes me feel good. It's really simple, but I don't know. I just something about the way he writes and the way he sings just makes me feel really
Yeah, I think.
calm and serene. It gives me peace.
Yeah, yeah. His early stuff, maybe the first five albums, like, it's tremendous songwriting, and you know, he does both piano and guitar. But um, he's always been an artist that, you know, just I love his music so much, and it does something, like, it, you know, it makes you feel good, like you said. It
Yes, it
kind of
does.
I mean, that's what music. I mean, I got to be honest. Sometimes you know, whether it's learning your song or something else, like sometimes I'll just be sitting alone at the piano, and you know, like, I'll get emotional with how
Yeah.
beautiful a certain chord sounds, or,
Uh-huh.
and that's just the way I love music. But I just,
Yeah.
it's gets back to how much I love the piano, and um, especially the acoustic piano. I mean, I know the keyboards can be very versatile.
Oh, acoustic is the best. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds so good. And fortunately, I have space upstairs where, I can fit this piano, and the acoustics are pretty good in the room where
Yeah,
I play
that
it.
matters.
Um,
So do you
and
use music for like is it a therapy's not the right word. Is it a soothing thing? Is it a kind of an escape, a way to level out? Do you use it for that? It sounds like you do.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I mean, it's excuse me, I really enjoy playing. And 99% of the time I'm just playing myself in front of my dogs. So I don't have an audience. And
Wonderful.
that doesn't make any difference to me. It sounds tremendous to me. I don't care if one person's listening or 100. And
Yes.
so there's something about it that just gives me a lot of like personal satisfaction, feels good. Now, there's moments, just like anything else in life, where you might get a little frustrated, or you
Yeah.
run into a wall, or
Sure.
feel like you're regressing. And um,
And Avi, give some people advice because people run into that, and a lot of people will quit over something like that. What do you do when that happens? Because it happens to everybody. It happens to me. What do you
no,
do
I
when that happens? When you hit that little
I
roadblock,
take
you're
a
like,
break,
man,
and I've learned when I get a little frustrated at the keyboard, I've learned to step away. Might even, whether that's for an hour, 24 hours. I've learned that if I'm not feeling good and I'm feeling overly stressed,
excellent.
just don't keep contributing to that. Just step away, clear your head a little bit. And a few weeks ago, I was away and didn't get the chance to play for maybe 7 or 8 days.
Uh-huh.
And when I came back, not only was it just like so rewarding and satisfying, but then that's when I was like, wow, like I really hear improvement, because I hadn't, you play every day, you don't always hear it yourself, but stepping away for a few days and coming back, it was like, um, it
Great
just
advice.
really, and it's usually the first thing I do when I wake up. It's very often the last thing I do before I go to bed.
Wonderful.
And it's just, I just love it so much.
That's a
And
great advice to take a break, whether it's like you said, sometimes it's a few minutes, sometimes it's a few days to go away. And if you've been practicing a lot, those few days, you'll come back and you'll somehow magically improve more than more than you feel like you should have if you were actually were playing on it every
yeah,
day. And I
I
like to
also,
add something to that.
sure.
Besides, sometimes maybe we choose the wrong song and it's a little above where we are. You have to be able to say, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to go to something else because there's zillions fun
Yeah,
songs to play. Don't kill yourself on that one song. Maybe you made maybe you just learned, the intro and verse and that was good enough. Maybe the chorus gets really hard or a solo part. Don't feel bad about setting that aside and going to something else because there's so
yeah.
much more music.
And
What do you think of
that's an
that?
excellent point. When I come across songs that I want to learn, but I feel they're a little bit above my skill set, I use it as like motivation. Like, hey, this is my goal, to be able to uh, learn this song accurately one day. Maybe I'm not there yet with my fingering or my hand independence, but I'll get there. And I use that as motivation. Um, but there was something else I was going to mention to you about the just lost my train of thought as far as the what we were talking about before, stepping away. Oh
Uh-huh.
yeah, so when I'm at a given session, I always try to make a point that when I do take a break,
Yeah.
whenever I decide to stop playing, I always want to do so on a positive note, on a
Okay.
song that I feel like I play well, or that
Yes.
really, because if I take a break at a moment where I'm really frustrated, like that, I'll kind of carry that frustration with me. you
Yes.
know, I'll keep thinking about, oh man, why am I struggling so much with this song? So I'll always try to just, whenever I do step away from the keyboard, just to do so on an on an uplifting note, no pun intended, but on a at a point where like I'm feeling good about how that song sounds.
Yeah.
And
That's good advice. Yes.
it
I mean, yeah, I want to ask you one quick question
yeah,
before we get to these. Then I'm going to ask you this series of questions that you might feel like you're
sure.
repeating yourself a little bit, but if you wouldn't mind
Okay.
just answering for because I got some business coaches now, and after not working in my business for 17 years, they're like, hey, if you actually put some time into this, you might could double or triple your your business. So part of that is these questions I'm about to ask you, but I had one more question I wanted to personally ask you about,
Yeah.
and that is when you're practicing, how much time do you spend? I mean, I know you always have the new one you're working on, but how much time do you spend playing the old ones that you already know? Like
It's
some
a
people will
really good
just
question.
work on the new thing and then they put it
No,
away and never play it again. Do you spend time playing those old songs
both,
that you've already learned?
both. Because you know, for example, the Jamaica Say You Will, which I
Yeah.
learned from you. That was one of the two songs that you recently did for me. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, once I feel like I really learned to play it well, like I wouldn't just put it on a shelf. I'm going to continue to learn new music, but I'm always wanting to play the stuff that I feel like I know well,
Yeah.
just because it's again, it's fulfilling and it's satisfying. Um, and rewarding. It feels good. And so it's always a constant cycle of like, all right, let's learn some new music, but I'm always going back to the old catalog. And a friend
Yeah.
of mine gave me good advice once. He's a guitar player.
Okay.
He said, when you're learning new stuff, like don't just learn one new song because you might get a little tired of the practice of like the
Right.
repetition of that. He goes, take like two or maybe three songs and
Yes.
the songs that you'll learn, but you'll rotate, so
Right.
this day I'm going to work on this new one, and then tomorrow I'm going to learn just so it breaks up the monotony of.
Good advice. And I'd like to add one thing to that. In order to be able to do two or three or four or five songs at once, you have to make sure they're not too hard. Pick songs that are in your wheelhouse that are not too hard for you. Doesn't mean they're dumbed down. There's lots of easy songs that are great songs. So do a lot of those, and you're going to start to get better without even trying if you play a lot of stuff all the time. So I think that's great advice that you just had there. Well, let me get to these questions here, if you don't mind, and then if they're repetitive, if you wouldn't mind, just
Not
answer
at
them again.
all.